4, 3, 2, 1. All right, welcome everyone to this edition of our virtual state meet through the coach's eye. We're really excited about this one here in Class 4A in the girls 4A state meet for this upcoming weekend. And joining us tonight are some excellent coaches, and you'll hear their accolades and everything coming up here shortly. I'm Ben Duea, running the Exchange Zone, second vice president of the IATC. Tim O'Neill, our past president, will also be joining us here momentarily. He's having some troubles with connection. Here he comes in, and we will be leading this discussion, sitting here and listening to these outstanding coaches talk about their teams. All right, so we'll pass it over to our moderator. He is the athletic director at Waukee High School, and that is Jim Duea.
Thank you, Ben. We are fortunate to have a very successful and well-respected panel of coaches for the 4A girls virtual state meet, and I'll start by introducing each one. The first one is the head girls track coach at Waukee, Matt Pries. Matt's been at Waukee for 13 years. Worked closely with former head coach Jesse Hunt during his early years and has now been the head coach the last 2 years at Waukee. During their time together, they won 11 conference titles, 12 state qualifying meet titles, and 7 state team championships. Also during that time, they combined to win 32 individual and relay state titles, along with 19 Drake relays, individual and relay titles. Matt Pries from Waukee. Our second coach is Kenny Wheeler from Pleasant Valley. Kenny's been a track coach for 19 years, 13 as the head coach at Pleasant Valley, 12 of those as co-head coach with his wife, Jane. During that time, Pleasant Valley had 10 conference titles, 10 state qualifying meet titles. They have combined to win 16 individual and relay state championships, 10 individual and relay Drake relays titles, along with the 2016 Class 4A state championship. Kenny Wheeler from Pleasant Valley. Our third coach is Chad Willeford from Southeast Polk. Chad has been a track coach for 24 years. 13 as the head coach at Southeast Polk. During his time, the Rams have won 5 conference titles and 11 state qualifying meet titles. His teams have won 4 individual and 2 relay state championships, along with 1 individual and 3 Drake relays championships. Chad Willeford from Southeast Polk. Our fourth coach is Chris Wood from Cedar Falls. Chris has been a part of the Cedar Falls program for the last 5 years, 2 as the head coach. During his time in the program, the Tigers have won 3 conference titles, 5 state qualifying meet titles. They have combined to win 7 state championships individually and in relays, and has 1 Drake champion. And then also the head coach of both the boys and the girls program at Ames High School, Ben Duea. Ben has done, I think, an outstanding job of bringing the Little Cyclones back to prominence at the state level during his tenure at Ames. Just a quick overview of our format today. I will introduce each event. We're going to start on Thursday, and we'll go chronologically through the entire state meet. I'll introduce the event, give a little background information, and then I will ask one of the coaches to take the lead, and then we'll ask the other coaches to jump in and give any other information that they have. We're trying to limit this to 3 to 4 minutes on each event, understanding this is all speculative. You as head coaches and those that are listening on the podcast know that your state lineups are built throughout the season by performances that you have during the year to have those performances. So this group of coaches is just trying to speculate where coaches might put their athletes, and then I think a lot of it is based on last year's state meet results. Without further ado, we will jump right in. Thursday, May 21st, there's 5 scoring events on the first day of the state track meet. The 4A girls meet opens at 2 p.m. on Thursday afternoon with the discus. The champion last year was April Zarnecki from Urbandale. She has graduated and has moved on to college. The state meet record is 156 feet 4 inches by Taylor Freeman from Iowa City West. That was set in 2008. And 5 of the top 8 place winners return. And discussing this, starting our discussion, will be Chad Willeford, Southeast Polk.
All right. Hey, just to preface everything, I think I can kind of speak for everybody on this. We're just going to assume that everybody's coming back. We're not going to account for new transfers or anything else like that. And I especially want to apologize if I butcher any names ahead of time. No disrespect at all. But looking at the discus, your top returner, she placed second last year from Council Bluffs Lewis Central with Lauren Payne. She had a PR mark, 140 at the state meet. She threw 132. Coming back, the third place finisher from last year was Sarah Breitsbecker. She's from Southeast Polk. She threw a PR at state with a 128. It's a great time to do that. Fifth from last year, Olivia Bauer from Indianola. She had a PR last year of 139. She threw 124 at the state meet. Sixth place finisher from last year was Evelyn Berger from Waukee. I hope I pronounced that correctly. She threw 130 at one point and 119 at the state meet. And then individual that didn't place last year, but I want to point out Madison Green from Valley. She threw right up around 130 during the year itself. So that group in and of itself, I think, is a good bunch of returners coming in.
Anything to add, other coaches? Chad did a nice job of running down the place winners.
I agree. I remember seeing Payne throw out at the regional last year, and I think she was probably on pace to try and get that victory this year. So I think it's appropriate to mention her. And then Chad, I'm sure Breitsbecker was ready to have a great year as well. I know Avalon was excited to throw against those girls.
One thing to point out with Lewis Central, they had the shot put and discus boys champion last year in Logan Jones, and now the girls discus champion last year as well. Really, really impressive what they have going on with their throws program out there in Western Iowa to have a state champion in both genders. And that girl, both of them were back this year, Jones on the boys and this girl on the girls' side. So pretty impressive for them.
Okay, moving on. A little later in the day on Thursday, we start on the track at 3:35, approximately 3:35, because the 1As will be going before us in 4A. The 3,000-meter run. The defending champion is Ashlyn Keeney from Iowa City Liberty. The state meet and all-time record is 9:24.67, held by Stephanie Jinks from Linn-Mar. She set that in 2014. And this will be an interesting one as the top 11 finishers from a year ago return. Ben, since you coached the girl that ran 17:22 for 5K in the fall, we're going to let you take this one.
All right. Well, guys, this is one event that it's too bad we won't get to see this race, because I'm not sure there's ever been depth like this in the 3,000. And I think, 10:30 might have been 8th place. I think you have to run under 10:30, maybe even under 10:20 to place in this field. 11 returners were back from last year's state meet. You start with I'm going to kind of go in the order that I kind of see it played out. And I'll start with Camille Jackson of Ames. She was third last year in this race in the 3K. Obviously, we know she set the all-time best in cross country this fall. And she ran 10:06 indoors, which we think might be the fastest indoor 3K time in the history of the state. So I think that this might have been the event for her to really go fast in this year. But it wouldn't be easy for her, as Ashlyn Keeney from Iowa City Liberty is back. She's the defending champion in 4A. She had a great season and especially a great finish to last year. So I think those two, along with Micah Paulette of Linn-Mar, I thought she looked really good indoors, very good indoors in her early races. She fifth last year in the 3K. And in 2018, don't forget, she was the state cross-country champion. I think she was running at a very high level early on this year, and I think she would be right in there with those two girls as well. Brooke McKee of Johnston, she was second last year, fourth in 2018. She's placed every year in this event in high school, places as well in cross country in the top 5, just a really solid runner. Going to Iowa next year, Camille Jackson going to Colorado, so 2 Division I runners in this race. I think she would be in the mix, especially for a top 5 finish. Then you got the Dubuque senior duo of Lillian Schmidt and Claire Edmondson. Schmidt, third at the state cross-country meet. She had a really good fall. Also has ran fast this year indoors as well. And her and Claire Edmondson both placed last year, third and fourth. Edmondson was 4th last year. Schmidt did not place. Another couple girls to keep your eye on in this one. Madison Plummer, Southeast Polk, 6th last year. Obviously a great cross-country runner as well. She's had an outstanding career for the Rams. Kaya Downs, an upcoming runner from Sioux City East, a sophomore, 6th in the state cross-country meet. I think she really was set to have a breakout track year as well, see what she could do with some of this talent in the field. Bella Hikus of Johnston was 5th this year in cross-country. She's poised to have a big year. And then don't forget about Ellen Poppenhag, I think is how you say it. Sorry if I mispronounced that, from Cedar Rapids, Kennedy. She placed last year, 7th in this 3K. And then Lauren Schultze of West Des Moines Valley. She ran 10:30 at Dickinson this year. So there's 11 girls right there. Like I said, I think you really would have had to run in the low 10s to solidify yourself as getting a medal at this state meet.
What do you think, gentlemen? Who do you think has the chance to win that race, especially some of those up right at the front?
I gotta go with Jackson.
I have to think Camille Jackson, just considering coming off of cross country season and just the confidence that would bring, knowing that you're the top returner after the fall. I think that's only a boost to heading into the track season and feeling like you're ready to put together another good season.
I think I just go back to, you guys remember Thursday of last year and running in what felt like the desert.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, I think just that I think it was a 10:04 that Ashlyn ran in that day, and she ran it by herself. And that was just, to me, just an amazing. I was looking so forward to watching those two go out of that race. And dare I say that that 2014 Jenks record may have been somebody seeking out to go get it, because those two, you put them on the track together and let them go after each other and switch back and forth on what looks like, I think I was looking at 74, 5 miles per hour wind. Could have been a real fun race, guys.
Let's not bring up the weather this year. It's been nice pretty much every day of the year.
That would have been a fun one. That would have been real fun.
It would.
We'll move on along to the next event. The next final on Thursday is the high jump, set to start at 4:30. The defending champion is Leanna Green from Waukee. The state meet record is by Kenesha Williams from Burlington, set in 2009 at 5 feet 8 1/4. Two girls jumped 5'6" last year, and Leanna Green won on misses. The other one actually competes for Kenny Wheeler, so we'll let Kenny start the discussion on the 4A high jump.
Yeah, so the 4A high jump had the top 6 returnees were coming back for 2020. And I'll kind of start from the bottom up and then throw in a young lady I think will be a blue chipper down the road. So some of the top contenders would have been Meredith Ball from Epworth, Western Dubuque, Ann Guest from Ottumwa, Claudia Johnson from Bettendorf. I've had a chance to watch her the last couple of years, and is a young lady that's just continued to progress and get better. Mira Basil from Dowling has been in the mix at the state high jump the last couple of years. She was 3rd last year. And then, obviously being the coach for Sarah Hoskins and watching her battle with Leanna Green last year, those two were ready to duke it out again this year, I think. And that's always fun when you have two competitors coming back at the top of their game, but also have the experience. I think in an event like the high jump, you've got to be able to handle that pressure. And so those two, I think, were primed to have another good showing this year. Then one young lady I had an eye on was Ariana Jackson. She was an incoming freshman athlete for Des Moines Roosevelt. She jumped 5'1" at the 8th grade state meet last year, and I think she's someone that would have been in the mix as well.
I agree. I was looking at that, Kenny, and remembering the jump off last year at 5'7", and it was so exciting. And you have had such a storied tradition with your high jumpers, And I started to wonder, geez, does Hoskins have an edge because she's a senior? And I think it would have been a lot of fun, but I do want to go back to Guest from Ottumwa. I think she has the best jump of the year this year at 5.5.
Yeah.
Hoskins and Green both, I think, jumped 5.4. And for us, that was an indoor school record. So Leanna was having a good year, but Dark Horse is the Guest girl from Ottumwa, I think.
Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, and I think as you started thinking about, team points, and obviously it's early on Thursday, I get it, but you're looking at an Ottumwa team that, brought back, I think, if off the top of my head, the third most returning points from a team, and I saw that they had a senior, I think it was Casey Nickerson, who had already jumped 5 foot this early in the season too, and you're talking about two athletes that could put together double points, and from a coaching standpoint, that all starts going into things that you're thinking about as you're playing around with how the week's going to lay out. And I thought that was pretty impressive to see Ann Guest up there jumping 5.5 already this early in the season, jumping 5.2. I mean, that's a pretty big jump for this early in the season, having 2 meets under your belt. And I think she did that early on in the season. You're talking 2 weeks into the season where a lot of our programs don't have the ability to be jumping much indoors. So I was overly impressed with that. And Leanna, she's always right up there. She's just an athlete and a competitor. So Sarah, I remember watching her her freshman year, and just she's grown to be such a great athlete and always well coached as well.
Yeah, I'd just add, if I remember correctly, at that first Wartburg meet, the Ottumwa girls went 1-3, as you just mentioned, and defeating Leanna Green, who was second at that meet. At 5:25, we tip off the 4x800 relay, 2 heats. The defending champion is Ottumwa. State meet record is 9:09:34, set by Waukee. Last year's Drake Relays champion and Drake Relays record holding team is Southeast Polk. So we're going to let Chad begin the discussion on the 4A 4x800.
Well, this one's, as you could probably guess, near and dear to our hearts. There's some pretty quality teams, and it's no disrespect to some of these other squads here, but I think two have kind of separated a little bit, I think, going into this season, and it's just based off of, what we saw last year and then what I know coming into this year. Obviously, Ottumwa is your defending state champions. They went 9-13, and when you've got wins, Grace and Allison, they're phenomenal. So, just with that on their team itself, it's daunting. I'm not trying to play home, but going into the season, Southeast Polk, we went 9-10 last year. Probably didn't run our best race at the state meet, but we had everything in place, I think, honestly and realistically, to go 9:05 this year. We got 3 girls basically that are at 2:15. We had another 2 that were under 2:20. We wanted this one really bad. We wanted to see what we could do. But it is what it is, and we continue on with what we've got, and we have some girls looking forward to the future. But some other teams, winners from last year, obviously Waukee, they're fully capable of going 9:20 with the mix that they have. Johnston's always got the crew that they can go, in the 9:20s. Some early teams that we saw at some of the indoor meets, I was impressed with Cedar Rapids Prairie. They had a great showing indoor. Linmar had a great showing indoor. Ankeny Centennial really improved quite a bit as well. So I think, there's a ton of teams right there that easily capable going in the 9:30s. But boy, I would have loved to see that race with the Ottumwa and Southeast Polk. And we'll just have to imagine, I guess.
Even though this team's a rival school of ours, this team won our conference cross country meet with a very young group. But I think Bettendorf High School would have probably put themselves in the mix a little bit this year as well in the 4x8.
I agree. I had them trying to push for a top 5 spot. And, Chad, as you talked, I was thinking about how good you and Ottumwa were last year. And I was thinking, I think we can get into the teens, maybe get close to 9:15 this year. And I just don't think that was going to do it. I would think you're right that it was probably going to come down to the 2 of you again. It would have been a lot of fun. And that's kudos to you and the Ottumwa staff for developing those kids in the right way.
You guys just talk about it, and it just blows my mind to think about our middle distance groups across the state and the talent that lays there from 4 all the way up, and just the diversity of what those girls can go out and do is just so impressive to me. And across the board, each of our teams, I know we have them, that we ask those athletes to go compete at a 3K level and then, come back and be an anchor on a 4x8. And that's just impressive to have those girls be willing to be able to do that, but also be able to actually go and do it.
Okay, moving on to the last final of the day on Thursday. Set to start at around 7:10. It's the 400-meter dash. The defending champion is Mackenzie Michael from Cedar Falls. The state meet, an all-time record, set 2 years ago by Sydney Milani, running 52:90. Since you have the defending champion, Chris, we're going to let you start the discussion.
Cool, thanks. Hey, I was looking forward to this one as well. The only senior that leaves out of those top 8 place finishers was ours, Ariana Kimbrough, whose season was cut short at UNI this year. This was going to be a fun one, I think. Just watching Mackenzie and Allie Bukanovic run early in the season, the times that they were running already was just and Mackenzie ran 57.8 and change at Iowa games, and I think Allie ran low 58 at the Dickinson. And those are 2 impressive times for an indoor track, and to be able to go out and do that. And then you had I've always been, the past 2 years, been a huge fan of Grace Larkins at Southeast Polk. I think her strength is just pretty impressive. I was looking forward to see what she would come back in a couple different events. Gabby Cortez was a freshman last year from Cedar Rapids Prairie. She finished 5th, and she ran a low 60 point early in the season. Grace Bukanovic, obviously have to give a shout out to her as well. Allie's twin sister, she went low. Jessica Caraway, one sneaky one that I thought that didn't place in the top 8 that kind of stood out to me was Bailey Blake from Indianola, and I saw her run a couple of times, and she was growing to a strength in the 400 that I think that just showed at her early time in the 61.8 early in the season. I was excited to kind of see what she did. Another one that I was interested to see, Holly Duax, the freshman from Southeast City West, or Sioux City West, excuse me, had ran a few 400s last year and ran some impressive times, and she didn't run at the state meet. And as the coach in the back of my mind was just thinking, as freshman to sophomore year, and you grow a little bit more maturity in year, and maybe if you get that itch in to want to compete with some of those other girls running fast times in the 400s, to see if maybe she might sneak in there. There's a couple girls, Audrey Bierman, I think, I apologize if I mispronounced that, from Western Dubuque. I was looking forward to seeing she was continuing to grow as well. So I want to open this one up. 7 of 8 returning in any event is fun to talk about. So what else did you guys think about?
I was actually hoping to throw one of my young ladies into the mix this year, Harmony Creasy. She split 56 for us last year at the end of the season in the sprint med, and that kid's just continuing to learn and grow, and I think it would have been a good experience for her this year to be in that group.
We mentioned her name earlier in the high jump. You hear a lot of good things in the Des Moines area about the freshman from Roosevelt, and that's that Ariana Jackson as a 4.8 girl as well. So I think you throw her possibly into that mix as well.
Yep.
I think Rachel Nagel, I apologize if I mispronounced her name, from Cedar Rapids Jefferson, ran one of the top 5 times on quick stats of last year, and finished, I think, in 6th place at 400. So, and she was going to be a senior coming back this year, which, you always have an itch coming as a senior, coming to get some. So
those 2 girls up front, Cedar Falls, Michael, and then the sister from Ottumwa, I think those 2 together really would have pushed each other to one of the top times of all time. Obviously, that 52.9 is going to last for probably quite some time, but I think those 2 ladies would have been well in the low 50, 54, 53 range with a good race together, pushing each other. I think would have been a really fun race to watch.
It was really cool to hear them talk on a podcast, a different podcast that they had chatted with each other, kind of going back, and they were both talking about how great their 400s and how hard they were working on it. But both of their answers were, we're trying to get speed for that other race. And it was really funny to hear them talk about how they wanted to push each other and get better at that 400 so they could move on to that race we're going to talk about in a little while.
Okay, so that brings Thursday to a close. We'd finished that 400 run a bunch of shuttle hurdle prelims and go home for the night. Come back the next day, and we start things off. 5 more final events on Friday. The first one at 2 o'clock, the shot put. The defending champion, or excuse me, not defending, because she has moved on to the University of Iowa, last year's champion.
She's got a 5th year.
Oh, she did get it. Okay. I didn't see her in the hallway, so maybe you knew something I didn't know. So last year's champion, Kat Mooney of Waukee. The state meet record is held by Erica Hammond from Clinton. She set that in 2016 at 47, 1.5. And we'll go with Coach Wheeler from Pleasant Valley to begin the discussion on the shot put.
Yeah, so this is always interesting, you know, when you have a stud champion graduate, and now, you know, the people that were sort of behind her shadow get a chance to shine a little bit. So the top 5 returners from last year, there's Lauren Payne from Lewis Central. We talked about her a little bit in the discus. Salima Omari from Iowa City West. Grace Tobin from Mason City. Isla Perez Johnson from Pleasant Valley, and Precious Daly from Des Moines Roosevelt were the top 5 returnees for this year. Some young ladies that had some strong starts already to this year. Madison Green from Valley West Des Moines, and Olivia Bauer from Indianola. But starting the season off really hot was Grace Tobin from Mason City, who had in early meet this year had already thrown 41 feet 8.5 inches. So pretty impressive start, considering, you know, you can only do so much indoors and with the weather and what you're limited to as far as space goes. So, you know, who knows what she was thinking by the end of the year, maybe 44 feet, 45, you know, pushing up towards those limits.
Just want to throw out Hope Wagner from Sioux City West. I think she was 3rd last year, and she probably would have been in the mix as well.
Thanks. Sorry about that.
That's all right. I was just looking at the same list you are. I think it's so hard to look at some of that stuff because it's all bundled together.
Numbers scrolling across.
But yeah, so I want to make sure I mention her. But Tobin's early season stuff that's really good.
Before we move on to the next event, I got a little ahead of myself. I was going to kind of summarize day 1, and I think maybe Chris was the one that mentioned this. If you come out of day 1 and just having some of the discussions that we had, I think the headlines in the paper, maybe not in the Des Moines Register because they might not have covered it, but the headlines in the paper might be that Ottumwa had the day 1 lead, just based on their performances in the high jump 4x8, and then probably having a chance to double place in the 400. And I know a lot of other teams, Southeast Polk's going to score on day 1. Waukee will get some points on day 1, but I think that day 1 leader may have been Ottumwa. Moving on to the first running event on the track on Friday will be run at approximately 3 o'clock, 3 heats of the distance medley. The defending champion is Cedar Falls. The state meet record is held by Cedar Falls, as they ran that time last year of 4 flat, 0.19. And we'll let Chris begin the discussion on the distance medley.
I don't want to spend too much time on this. This happens to be my personal favorite for a variety of different reasons. And this coming season, I just was going through my Mike J brain and started thinking about statistics. And of the 32 athletes that ran in the top 8 teams, only 6 are gone. And I know there's a lot of things that move around in those relays. But one of the reasons that I love this, and just to give the other side of maybe what the audience doesn't think about in terms of how coaches' brains work, is we're putting lineups together from state qualifying meets to our state meets, and we have athletes moving around a lot. And within our program, we talk about team first and the importance of being able to help your team perform the best at state meet. And this is what ends up happening the past 2 years for us with the DMR, is that Mackenzie Michael doesn't run it at the state qualifying meet because she's got to run the 400 the next race. And I know a lot of you guys are in that same predicament. And so you're depending on a lot of other athletes that can step up in the positions to potentially either get you into that fast heat at state, or to be able to at least compete in a position if you are going to choose to run, say, a Mackenzie Michael. And we've been fortunate enough that we've had some outstanding athletes that have put us in a position to run in that race in the finals. And I think that it's so fascinating to me that in the state qualifying meet, we run that 4x8, we get that 45-minute break, and you've got your 3K girls and your 4x8 girls that are ready to come back and help your DMR in any way that they can. And it's such an impressive group of athletes on the track all at once that are able to go out and perform. Coming back, obviously last year was a pretty amazing finish for us. We ran 4 minutes flat almost. But if you guys remember that race, Ashlyn Keeney was just tracking. And she was just coming. And Mackenzie, I remember Mackenzie telling me, she goes, I swear I felt her breathing on my neck. And so I was really looking forward to that. Chad and Southeast Polk, you guys always put together a team that's able to be there. Was really looking forward to actually seeing City High come through there. I know CC Kelly Harvey, who was a sophomore last year and anchored that race, was working hard on being a really, really competitive 800 runner this year. And then Prairie's putting together, they're a good team. They were all underclassmen last year, which I was really looking forward to seeing them come back too. I just love this race. There's so many different lineups that can be played around with. And I was looking forward to the goal of that team coming back for us was to go 3:55 and compete for one of those Tim O'Neill times. So looking forward to coming back for that one. Again, you could have seen another Keeney Mackenzie Michael battle at the finish line if you were lucky. So.
Yeah, something else that popped out to me was that Waukee, in addition to Liberty, Waukee, Centennial, and Prairie all returned all four runners. It was going to be a battle. I think you're right that it probably comes down to you and Liberty, Chris. But it was going to be really fun to see Southeast Polk, Waukee, Ankeny, Centennial, Prairie, and then City High right there. It was going to be a battle.
Chris, I remember that race last year, and I happened to have a chance to talk to Mackenzie out in North Carolina at the New Balance Nationals, and I remember her going out really fast, probably too fast. And I said to her, how fast did you go out? She said, she's not a real talker.
No,
you, but not to me. And I think her comment was something to the effect, too fast. And I think she was out in about 60. And so Keeney was coming on her as Mackenzie was maybe paying for that first lap, but still an unbelievable time last year. The next event will be in the field starting at around 4:30, and that is the long jump. Last year's champion is Darby Thomas, now competing for the University of Nebraska. The state meet record is held by Darby at 19 feet 8 inches. Chris, we're going to let you talk about this. I remember last year when that event was over, I don't think it went maybe as well as it needed to go for you. And I can't say that the Waukee camp was all that upset about that. So we'll let you talk about the 4A long jump.
Yeah, I got to give Bertelson, long jump coach, he's a really good friend of mine, and we were sitting next to each other that whole event. So that was a tough one. Unfortunately, we were not going to have either of those athletes back this year. Emerson chose to pursue a basketball route, and Sarah actually tore pretty much everything in her knee during basketball season. That was going to be – it's still a great one to talk about with I believe it's top 8 from last year, or graduating seniors. I think just seeing what she did early in the season already, knowing her powerfulness down the track as well off the board, Demia Burrell is got to be up there as one of the top for me. She's just explosive. Really liked watching. I think Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong, it was Harmony that jumped last year. That she's just composed. And that was impressive to me in terms of how she went about it. That's the thing with long jump, and I learned it as I'm the baby of this group without a doubt. And watching that last year, is there's a lot of things that can go really right or really wrong with the long jump, and some things that just didn't sway your way. There's all those athletes that are in there are extremely mentally tough. Was looking through some of the jumps from this year, and noticed that Demia was up there, obviously looking to compete. I believe that Makita Mayberry from Ankeny, and I don't know the Ankeny squad quite as well as some of you guys did, had jumped an early season 17-1, which I don't know. I didn't really see her name on the list from last year's long jump. I know that she's a pretty talented young short sprinter, but that would have been throwing a kind of an interesting mix into there as well.
Yeah, I was going to mention her. Let me jump in real quick. I was going to say something about Mayberry from Ankeny. I know Coach Cotter has been doing great work up there, and she did come out at Dickinson, and she jumped over 17 foot. So she got the speed for it. So I think the sky was the limit for her on that one.
Yeah, a couple other individuals. Angel Baylark from Burlington, just amazing to watch. Powerful young lady. I think once she puts it all together, she's gonna have some impressive jumps. Morgan Ramirez from Pleasant Valley was a Drake Relays qualifier last year. She didn't qualify for state last year because we had two other girls that were 17 foot plus last year, and she got off to a good start this year. I think she would have been in the mix as well.
It's a wide open event.
And it looks like it will be next year too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Getting back to the track, 4:45 approximately, 3 heats of the 4x200. The defending champion is Waukee. State meet record is that time where Cedar Rapids Jefferson went under 140 at 139.24. It was set in 2015. As the defending champion, we'll let Coach Pries begin the discussion on the 4x200.
Well, two things stood out to me right away. I guess three. One was that Southeast Polk has all four back. They're the only team that does have all four back on that relay. And then I looked at a girl we haven't talked about yet, Tegan Lipsey, the anchor for Ames, who's very talented. And I think she was on some kind of video that they put out about seniors, and she looks like she's fit as can be. And Ben, you can maybe speak to that in a little bit. But then the other one was Creasy, the anchor for PV. And we've already mentioned her a couple times, but hearing Kenny talk about the fact that she split out at 56 last year, I think you're right in the mix. I know we're not going to run a 400 here, but she's definitely got speed to go. I do feel pretty good about what we have coming back at Waukee. We have 3 back, and then we had enough depth last year that we were able to spread some people out. So replacing graduated senior last year, Delaney Taylor, with a couple girls who had events left over, I think we'd have been right there as well. So that's where I'd go. The other team to think about in this regard would be Linmar. They've been known to have some really good sprinters through the years as well. So that's where my head's at with 4x2.
Yeah, I thought Southeast Polk with their group coming back and pretty senior heavy, a group that's just gradually progressed over the years. I think you guys ran 143 last year, or maybe high 142. So I think they would have put together a good group.
I think the Dickinson Relays 4x2 this year could have been a precursor to what that might have looked like. And if you were there, that was a race where Waukee led coming down the home stretch, and Ames went by them right at the end, and Southeast Polk was coming, I think, with Clement on the anchor, and all 3 teams finished within maybe a tenth of a second at the Dickinson Relays.
Yeah, something to note for our group. We in that race, Lipsey did not run. We have a real good group of freshman girls. We'll talk probably about them here shortly in some of these races, but also had an impactful transfer move in from Georgia that helped contribute to that. But we would be in a different situation at the state meet, because this girl from Georgia, Morgan Ingalls, is a real good 400 hurdler. So I don't know if she could have been able to run the 4x2. So would have been an interesting lineup maneuver for Ames in that one.
It would have been a lot of fun, that's for sure.
The last final of the day on Friday, before we would have gotten to the 4x1 and 4x4 prelims, is the 400 meter hurdles. The defending champion is from Iowa City High, Carolyn Schackenbach. I hope I got that one close. state meet record is held by Peyton Winsel. She ran 60.15 from Linn-Mar in 2018. And we'll let Coach Willeford from Southeast Polk, since he had one that was right in the mix last year to possibly win the race, and unfortunately hit the 9th or the 10th hurdle. So we'll let him relive that memory and talk a little bit about the 400 hurdles.
I'm sure Grace would appreciate that as well. Out there, but yeah, the 400 hurdle is actually one that's another near and dear to my heart, just because that's what I ran back in the day. Obviously, your defending champ, Schackenbach. I apologize again, don't know, but she went 103 last year, low 103, like a 103.3. Obviously, she'd be the one to beat, I think, coming in. Hill from Ankeny Centennial, I think her first name was Millie. Improved quite a bit. She ended up going 106. She placed 4th last year. Gal from Iowa City West, Amy, I think is it Liao? She was just under 108, I believe. She was 5th. Grace ended up 6th from Southeast Polk, Grace Larkins with a 105.2. I guess we'll just leave that as it is. She had goals this year, but it was unfortunate. She actually tripped after the 10th hurdle, about maybe 10, 15 meters from the finish line. She just caught a spike there. But she was hoping to do some good things. And then through the rumor mill online, we saw that Mackenzie Michael was having a little go at some hurdles too. So obviously, if she had anything to say about that, she'd get into the mix. And as Ben mentioned before, you never know what you're going to get with the 400 hurdles. It's a tough event for freshmen to come into, but obviously one transfer or anybody else like that, somebody new to the mix, somebody pulls an 800 runner that can run a good 400, that's a good athlete overall, that could get in the mix. So that was going to be a fun one to watch.
Let's put Coach Wood on the spot.
We tried this with Miss Kimbrough last year, and she hit a hurdle down at Tim's meet in Assumption, and I said, we're done. She was ambitious. She had worked a lot all season and a lot with hurdle drills, and she had asked that I post that video just to see what kind of rouse it got out of it. So I don't know if it would have been realistic. That's pulling her out of a race where you guys know that the strength to put her in something that's a risk. But she was passionate about it, and she was very intrigued. So that's a tough race, like you guys said. A lot of things can happen, and especially when you've got 15,000 people watching you. So I was really excited to see Grace come back and kind of have that redemption year, because I know you could see as soon as she tripped, that was a heartbreaker. And just to see her get up and still finish in 6th place was the most impressive thing to me. She didn't quit.
Something that I think about our sport, and this is true of all of you sitting here, it's just the massive amount of respect that I have for you guys, but the way that the girls act towards each other, and that comes from how they're coached by you, but also the fans at that meet, which I think we always talk about being one of the best state meet in the country. When something like that happens, everyone feels for that kid. I can't think that there's anyone in the stadium saying, "Oh, good." And I'm glad that Grace has another shot after this year. She'll be senior next year, yeah.
She's going to be senior, yeah.
So she's not done. But I just think that's something that we need to remember about not just our sport, but the people who are connected to it. It's pretty special.
That'll be a fun race with a lot of young ladies coming back in the future as well. So I'm looking forward to that.
One thing impressive about the Schackenbach, Iowa City High, great year last year, and she's also made herself a pretty darn good 100 hurdler as well over the last couple of years. So she's just had a nice career for the City High.
All right, so that takes us to the end of day 2. We finish up the 4x1 and 4x4 prelims and leave the stadium and come back bright and early on Saturday morning. I have penciled together, I did it before we started our discussion, and some of my pencil marks are probably having to change just based on some of the information we've had tonight. But I look at the end of day 2, and I'm thinking that for some of the things they did during the day on day 2, that Southeast Polk would have moved themselves into a position of possibly being in the lead. Waukee, with some depth in a lot of different places, is probably going to score some points and put themselves in a position. I'm sorry to hear that about Cedar Falls with the two girls because I had them scoring big and had them right in the hunt after day 2 as well. So with that, we'll go on to day 3. And again, my opinions don't mean anything, so don't worry about that. But going on to day 3, by the time we run a lot of heats of 1A, 2A, 3A, we get to the 4A sprint medley at about 9:35. The defending champion is Cedar Falls. State meet and all-time record was set by Linmar in 2018 at 1:43.64. Pleasant Valley had a team that was very competitive last year, obviously with the anchor running the split that she ran. So we're going to let Kenny start the discussion on the sprint medley.
All right, Chris. So if you're going to run Mackenzie Michael in the 400 hurdles, then what are you doing for a 4th event, buddy? So this event's always a fun one. For us personally, I think we've been in the top 3 in this event for the last 6 years. So it's fun to always just kind of be in the hunt, just because it's an intense race and it's going to come down to the anchor. Cedar Falls, obviously, with Mackenzie Michael, just a stellar kid. But I also think Cedar Falls has some sprinters on the front end that would have put them in a pretty good position. Pleasant Valley, obviously, with Harmony, I think we have a really veteran sprint group behind her at a couple of our 100 and 200 meter legs that put us in the hunt. And then Southeast Polk, obviously with all 4 returners from last year. Again, a veteran group, a tough group. Kids that have been 4x4 Drake and state champions. Those kids know how to win. So I think those 3 teams would have been out front. Right behind them, though, Epworth Western Dubuque with Audrey Bierman, Sioux City East, Linnea Wells was their anchor. Ankeny Centennial with Vortherms. Hopefully I'm saying her last name correctly. We've talked a little bit about Cedar Rapids Prairie with Gabby Cortez, and then Ames with Lipsy, who was their anchor last year. So, that event is so awesome because, that last lap, kids are just pushing each other to the max, trying to find position and just duke it out through that last 100. So, that one's a toss-up, I think.
I think that would have been a really interesting one, Ben, to see Ames' squad with your newbies coming in, especially if Morgan's going to run those 400 hurdles and able to come back and be a stellar anchor on that sprint medley for you guys. I think you've got some impressive, at least at the beginning of the year, some sprinters up there that could have probably put you in the mix of those top 3. We would have had a whole new mix. And Kenny, to make your point, I learned my lesson with the sprint medley and the 800 early on in my career. So we would have been rolling with somebody else, but we had a young kid that was probably would have ran and placed in the open 4 in place of Kimbrough last year, Sydney Stokes, who was a sophomore this year, who split 57 for us in a 4x4. So we felt pretty confident about that as well, but I think it would have been tough with PV, Southeast Polk, and I would have put Ames up there too.
At Waukee, the sprint medley 800 double is affectionately named the Lily Campbell double because Coach Hunt and Coach Pries made her do it, I think, all 4 years. And it got a little better when they started having the boys sprint medley. It gave her a little bit more rest time.
That was fun. She didn't love us very much, but she did all right.
That's why I said affectionately.
Yes.
Affectionately named. Let's move on. Our discussion has been great, but I think the producer of the show is watching his watch a little bit. Ben is a little bit. So
we're doing good. We're all right.
Okay. We're going to move on to the 800 meter run, set to run at approximately 11 a.m. Maybe, we talk about some of these other events and how they're marquee events, and this might be the one, if there is one, it may be more special than any of the others. The defending champion is Ali Bukanosevich from Ottumwa. The state meet record is 208.15, set by Shelby Houlihan from Sioux City East. And I'll let Mr. Pries talk about this a little bit, as there are a whole bunch of girls returning.
How about it? All 8 place winners. And then when you go to the 9th person back, it's a girl we've already talked about, Kaya Downs from Sioux City East, who had a nice fall, and it was going to be a battle royal. Just so much fun. And if you think about last year's race, you had the twin, I'm going to pronounce her name a different way than everybody else right now, Bukanaspish. I don't know. I think that's right.
I think you're right.
And Mackenzie had kind of separated. And then it was this massive group of about 6 or 7 girls just hammering to try and, get in front of and I remember talking to Chris, what was it, at the banquet, or maybe it was later that day, when we talked about that race. Even though Mackenzie was second, Jess Caraway and Sid Schaefer had put themselves in a good position. I think, they were 5th and 7th. And that really helped us because we didn't score in the sprint med. So that was a big event for us and kind of changed the trajectory a little bit. But I think we're looking at the same group of girls again, and senior loaded. 6 of the returnees are seniors. So I think you're looking at Bukanaspish and Michael up front with Keeney right there. And then you got the other twin, Grace and Caraway, Edmondson from Dubuque Seniors in the mix, Schaefer, bring in McGowan from Southeast Polk, Downs. Boy, what a fun race.
Throw in Jackson from Roosevelt too.
Sure, yeah.
Freshman.
Yep.
Yeah, I think you had a lot of girls that were setting their eyes on not just state titles there, but setting some pretty impressive times. And I fully expect with the group of girls that even is coming back that there's going to be some competitive races in the years to come, and I'm pretty excited to watch them. I think something that we haven't mentioned probably enough of is Claire Edmondson from Dubuque Senior. I mean, year in, year out, that young lady is put on a show across the board, and she does pretty much what it seems, whatever her team needs her to do. And she goes out there and competes, and I've always been impressed with how she races from the cross country season all the way through the track and field season.
Agreed.
I would add, I think back to 2009, and I remember Mike Jay's call of the 800, and Waukee had Colette Gennady in the race, but I remember him saying this could be the greatest 800-meter field in state meet history with Gennady and Houlihan and Doherty and Katie Flood. Yeah. And he might have had to rephrase his comments for this race because this might have been the greatest of all time field. We tried to spread things out and have everybody kind of touch on the same number of events, and that left one event to do. And so I'm gonna cover it or begin the conversation around it, and that is the shuttle hurdle relay. Begins at 12:05 on Saturday afternoon. The defending champion is Waukee. I think it needs to be mentioned, though, that Ames actually won the race but was disqualified for leaving early. Ames is the defending champion. The state meet all-time record is held by Waukee. They ran that in 2007 at 1:61, just an outstanding time. So as we talk about that event, I think the conversation, when we talk shuttle hurdle, I think the conversation usually does start with Waukee. Waukee has 3 of the 4 runners back from that squad a year ago, and good depth in their hurdle field, and just thinking of runners that could possibly replace that outgoing runner. Kinsey Winger, the younger sister of Sydney, who was an outstanding runner for Waukee, had already posted an outstanding time indoors and was 6th or 7th at the Dickinson Relay, so she would have easily filled into that spot and made Waukee another year of contention. Other teams in the field, a lot of girls, and this is similar in some of our other races. You go right down through the place winners, and Dowling was second, and they have 3 of 4 back. The key point there would be that their top hurdler is the one that's missing. That's Juru Okorome, who is on to college now. Iowa City West has 3 of 4 back, but the one they lost is Peyton Steva, so that might negatively affect them. Centennial definitely has really come on with their shuttle teams in recent years. They have 3 of 4 back, including Katie Peterson, who I'm sure will be discussed here in a little bit when they talk about the open 100 hurdles. City High has all 4 back, and Liberty has all 4 back, and there's other teams that I think are in the mix there. Shuttle hurdle is a race where a lot of things can happen. I've always, our former superintendent at Waukee was a former track coach, Dr. Dave Wilkerson, and he said the shuttle hurdle relay, 44 ways to lose a state meet, because he lost one year with a girl that fell on a hurdle. So I'll let the rest of you discuss a little bit on your thoughts on the shuttle hurdle.
I think both Iowa City schools, City High and Liberty, considering City High has 4 really good athletes on their shuttle, but they're also really young. But I've gotten a chance to watch them a couple of times, and I think with another year of experience, they would have been right in the mix. Liberty with Taylor Cannon, I think she was probably one of the, if not the top 100 hurdler returning in the state. And I think when you have somebody like that on your team, you're always going to be in the hunt.
From Central Iowa, I think Ankeny Centennial was going to be really, really good this year in that race. They had an excellent year last year. They're right there with Waukee and Ames the entire year. And as they said, they got most of their team back. So I think they would have been a tough beat there in the shuttle. But Waukee definitely the clear favorite there in the 4A shuttle.
Okay, so we get the shuttle hurdle completed, and we move on to a couple of sprint races on the front straightaway. The first is the 100-meter dash, which for 4A will be at about 12:50. And last year's champion has moved on. That's Karis Roberts from East Waterloo. The state meet and all-time record holder is Sydney Milani from Southeast Polk at 11.49. She set that in 2018. And we'll let Coach Wheeler from Pleasant Valley set the field for us in the 100-meter dash. So
this one would have been a fun one. See who's the new queen of the track in the 100-meter dash for Class 4A. It's an awesome group of returnees. We'll start with Mytika Mayberry from Ankeny. All I can remember is her close last year in the Drake Relays 4x1 to win that for them. Just an amazing, powerful sprinter. Her teammate right behind her, Ava Vandemortel. Some other young ladies I think would have been right in the mix. Janela Hoskins from Dubuque Hempstead has really come on well. She had a strong junior season and really got off to a strong start this year in a couple of early season meets. Holly Duex, we've mentioned her before, from Sioux City West. Chris, we've talked a little bit about Anasia Smith. I think she would have been a sophomore this year. You were pretty high on her coming into this season, and she was a contributor, I know, on your 4x1 last year that placed at state. Hannah Stelke from Cedar Rapids, Washington, also a stud basketball player. And then Avery Horner from Bettendorf High School. They've got a really good young sprint nucleus. So Avery Horner, Katie Gersh is another one for Bettendorf. So it would have been fun to see some new kids sort of rise to the occasion in that event.
Yeah, I would throw in another Indianola kid, Grace Giaffretti. Sorry if I mispronounced that. She had a pretty impressive Dickinson in the 60, and she was explosive. Anicia, again, for us, I was impressed with how she came into the season. I got to give a shout out. I'd be remiss not to. Raylan Smith, who was a senior this year for us, was diagnosed with cancer early on in her life, and the past 3 years has battled some ups and downs, and she was always one of the best athletes we had. She just could never get healthy, and this year she was healthy. And she finished in the top 8 at Dickinson in the 60, and we were really excited for her as a senior to go out and be able to show kind of the world what she could do. And so her season was exceptionally cut short, but we were looking forward to seeing what the Smith girls could do for us as well.
I watched the Duex girl at the regional meet out in Council Bluffs last year give Darby Thomas everything she wanted. I think both races were decided by hundredths of a second. And as a freshman to compete at that level, I would think that she would be right up there as a favorite this year. Moving on, the next event, the 100-meter hurdles. Last year's champion was Darby Thomas from Council Bluffs Abraham Lincoln. The state meet record was set by Sydney Winger Waukee in 2018 at 14.12. And we'll let Matt Pries from Waukee talk a little bit about the 100-meter field to begin.
This one a little bit more wide open. We four seniors of the top 8. I will say that maybe the class of the field remains to return, and that's the Cannon girl. And then we've talked about Yankee Centennial continuing to improve. The Peterson girl, maybe right there with her. Roosevelt, I'll work on this one. Uba Digbo, I think is how you say it. But she's fun to watch. Very athletic girl. We've talked about Schockenbach. Jules Buss from Ames, I think, was primed to have a good year. Basile again from Dowling, and I'm going to throw a couple Waukee girls in there, but for sure Natalie Harris, who did not run the 100 hurdles last year. She instead ran the 200. But she was splitting out close to 15 flat, 15-1, and I think she was set to. I think she was third at Dickinson, and she's set to have a really good year. And then Addie Dries, our senior, had probably as fit as she's ever been. Had a great winter, so I think they might have jumped in there. I know that's maybe being a little homer, but definitely the Harris girl was going to make a push to be in that top 3 to 4, I think. But Cannon and Peterson, I think, are the class of the field.
I would agree with that.
Give a shout out to Gherkins, who would be a senior this year from Cedar Rapids Kennedy. She ran, it was mid-14s during the season last year, and she didn't finish at the state meet so she didn't make the final. But she was a through and through the races that we ran last year. She was impressive. Not sure exactly what happened in that prelim race, but I know that she probably would have came back a little hungry.
That's a good call. I missed that one. Great point, Chris.
Okay, the next event on the track is the 200-meter dash. We do all of the pomp and circumstance with giving awards out while they get ready to run the 200. And at about 2 o'clock, we would be ready for that final. Last year's champion was Karis Roberts from East Waterloo. The state meet record, an all-time record, I believe, was set by Sydney Milani from Southeast Polk at 23:69 in 2018. Two things I got to mention here. As I go through these state meet records, was almost everyone set in 2018. That was one heck of a state meet because so many of the records were set that year. We're going to have Chad Willeford talk about this, but I want him to, if he would, just a second, think back to 2 years ago because we had something that happened that just really doesn't ever happen, and that is one girl in Class 4A winning all 4 of the individual races. And Chad, if you can share with us, she had won the 400. She had to sweat out the second heat of the 800 because she ran out of the slow heat and had to watch Lily Campbell run a second slower than her in that second heat to win the 800. Then she won the 100. Talk to us a little bit about Sydney and how she prepared, or what can you remember about that 2018 season state meet for her, and then they lead us into the 200-meter discussion.
I think lots of stress. I think honestly, as a coach, I was more stressed about the state qualifying meet, having to run all 4 events within minutes, basically. And she was cramping up in the 800, and we thought everything was just going to go awry. And I made the worst decision of my life by asking her to do all 4 events. But honestly, as an athlete, I think Sid's probably big stress point was on Saturday was the 800. She was a little leery of the fact that she was in the slower heat. We, did some pace work and things like that. The 800 was new to her that year. So as soon as she got the 800 under her belt, she was good to go. She had such a great attitude after that. It was just, you could just tell it just, I got that one done. That was the big one in her mind. And then the 100, the finals of the 100, that was only the 4th time she'd run it that year. So she's just trying to get after it. I mean, there's just concentrate on the start and get after it, and then to run the Iowa all-time best. Then if you remember, we had that rain delay, and I think that was a gift because she was able to. We went across the street. We actually got into a carpeted classroom across the street there, and they had sofas and stuff like that. So we just took over in there, and she put her feet up. She got a rest. She got a chance to refuel. And after that rain was done, I don't know if you guys remember, but it was just so calm. The air was everything was calm. It was beautiful. It was perfect. And she looked more relaxed and confident going into that race than I can remember. And I think it was an emotional time because she knew it was the last time she was going to be on the track as a high school athlete. But I mean, she was just calm and confident going into that one. So I'm truly blessed as a coach to be able to be a part of what happened there. You know, I'm so thankful for that. So it was awesome.
It was.
Set that. What do we got going in the 200-meter dash? Anybody want to touch on
Yeah,
that?
I got that one. The 200.
Okay.
Tough to follow that.
Honestly, yeah, tough to follow that, especially when 5 out of the 8 graduate from the previous year. I mean, you got your top runners like Roberts and Thomas not there. I think there's one individual that kind of sets herself apart from the group, and that's not to knock on anybody else, but I mean, her PR time is almost a full second ahead of everybody else, and that's Duea. I'm going to put a plug in right now. You know, from Sioux City West, I as a coach would love to see her do the 1-2-4 at a state meet, and I think she could do some just get some incredible points there as an individual. So in my mind, she's, you know, coming back. She placed 3rd last year, but I think she'd be the favorite coming in. And then after that, holy cow! I mean, we had a couple place winners with Morris from Roosevelt, went 25.8, and Wells from Sioux City East. She had a PR of 25.7. But then it's open. You know, I know Harris from Waukee could be right in the mix there. I think she could go low 25s. I think Jada Williams from Mason City is coming on as a good sprinter there. I was impressed by Moon from Ames at the indoor meet. Who knows? I mean, what'd she go, Ben? 26.4 or something in the open?
26:41, yeah.
Yeah. So that at that meet, that's
68, awesome. 26:68, I think.
All right. So she would have continued to improve. Not sure if we would have ran Taryn Hill in that or not. She's a mid-25 runner from Southeast Bowl. But it was, I think after her first there, it's, you know, all things considered, it's pretty wide open. So it would have been fun to see just, you know, who would have stepped up and where the points would have gone on that one.
I have a question. Do you think that the gals from Ankeny that possibly could have swept the 100, do you think that they, Chad, you probably would know best since you're guys that coach there, you think they were looking to run the open too?
How do I put it? I don't know that the Open 2 is necessarily their favorite event.
Yeah.
So, you know, it's hard to say. I think if Cotter had his way, yeah, that's the way they push and that's the direction they go. But I think, you know, if he spreads them out in some different places, they'd score big in some other areas too. So I think the 100, I'm just speaking, you know, what I see. I think the 100 obviously is their first love. I'm not sure about the 200. I'd score some points, and if they really got after it, they'd be a factor. They've got some tough sprinter there.
Give another shout out to another freshman from Waterloo East, Nyla Norman, ran a 26.9 indoors, and that was at Wartburg, and you guys have seen the curves up there. So that was an impressive. That was the first time I had seen her, and she looked
good looking runner.
Yeah, great looking runner. So excited to see her.
Okay, we are coming down to the end, guys. We're to the 1,500 meters, set to go off at around 3 o'clock on Saturday afternoon. The defending champion is Ashlyn Keeney from Iowa City Liberty. State meet record held by Stephanie Jenks from Linn-Mar at 4:27.76. And as we've said in the other distance races, another loaded field of returning runners. And Ben, why don't you start our discussion in the 1,500?
All right. Well, we start with the defending state champion, and that's Ashlyn Keeney. She ran 4:34.04 as a freshman. Just a phenomenal time. And I would have to start with her as the favorite. Now, I don't think it would be hand given to her this year, just knowing the depth of this distance field. If I had to go with the second spot right now, I would have to put Camille Jackson of Ames. She was 8th last year. She ran 4:47. And I just don't know if we could set a limit as to how fast she could run that 1,500. I think she would challenge the title along with Paulette of Linn-Mar, 4th last year. I do kind of see those three girls separating themselves in both the 3K and the 1,500. But there's some excellent runners behind them. You look at Aaliyah Tempass of Johnston. She ran 4:52 at the Dickinson Relays this year, which is the state leading time indoors before the cancellation of the season. Really good cross-country season for their state championship team. We've talked about Claire Edmondson of Dubuque Senior quite a bit, just a versatile runner. Third last year, she ran 4:43. And then Brooke McKee of Johnston was fifth last year. So some of the same girls. The thing to note from last year, 4:34 was the winning time. And then of the returners back, it was 4:43 to 4:47. And that included Paulette, Tenpass, Jackson, Edmondson, and McKee. So those five girls kind of fighting for that second spot and challenging Keeney for the title. So would have been a good race. And you know what? I think anything could have happened in that 1500.
I agree, and it's interesting because I'm looking at it, and Johnston had some really nice depth. The Hikus girl was right there last year, and so
they'd have to pick.
Yeah, they would.
They would have to pick and have a time trial.
I wonder maybe you give the nod to McKee, but with Tempest's performance at Dickinson, you just don't know.
Right.
And we've talked about Claire Edmondson before, but I just really like the way she races. She's a smart runner, but aggressive. She's strong. So I think she'd be right there as well. Yeah.
This has been fun. It's tough because as a coach, as we're thinking about this, Mackenzie ran 4:51 at Dickinson this year and set a PR there. And she doesn't love that race, but she knows that's going to be a strength for her. It will have to probably be in the future. And as we talked through the season progression and what we wanted to continue to do, it's hard to say, let's throw into this mix when there's other races out there where you don't have 1 through 8 that could win it, right? I mean, that's a tough race to jump into, and then you're taking her out of a race that you would love.
And you have her up to 6 events now.
Yeah. Hey, I got to play my cards, man.
Madison Plummer, somebody that I've always kind of had an eye on, and just she's just grown in her strength over the last couple of years. And then again, Ariana Jackson, she ran 4:54 as an 8th grader in the 1500. I think she could have been in the conversation as well.
I was talking with Coach Pries this morning, and I mentioned this to him. I the other night, for whatever reason, I was watching on Mile Split. I watched the Dickinson Relays. Camille Jackson went through the first mile in 5:13, so I think would probably go better than her 4:47 that she ran last year. She's put herself on a whole nother level of where she was as an athlete the year before. So I think it's probably a two-person race there, but you never know. We got 2 events left. They're both the relays of exciting events that round out the meet. The first is the 4x1 set to run at a 3:35. The defending champion is Ankeny with a lot of runners back. State meet record is set by Iowa City West in 2010 at 47:89. And we'll let Coach Pries from Waukee lead us off with the 4x1.
Yeah, so several teams with a number of girls back. Ankeny has 3 back. We've talked about their sprinters. I think they're probably the favorite. We have 3 back at Waukee. Linmar's got 4 back. Bettendorf, we've talked about them. They've got 4 back. And then you've got PV, Hoover. And again, Hoover is a team that Coach Means is really trying to help get them back up on the map. So for them to have a little success last year and taste that, I think was going to help them out this year in terms of just generating a little more excitement. And then Chris, you've got 2 back at Cedar Falls, and Ben, you've got 2 at Ames. But again, we talk about, what's that gal from Georgia do? And you got some nice freshmen. So even though you might be sitting maybe 7-8 off of last year, it's hard not to think that you'd be pushing for a top 5 spot. So it's going to be a fun battle up front. Get to stick around, boys.
Yeah.
I think Ankeny's the clear favorite here, and I believe they have a shot they would have had a shot at setting that all-time record of going under 48. It just the impressiveness of those 2, especially in the 100 and 60 indoors. I think they really would have ran fast there.
And they're going to be around for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think Lindbar again was pushing that envelope too with some of their sprinters that I saw early on. I think that they were going to be able to put together a pretty good squad there too.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, moving on to the final event of the day, and the meet might have come down to that last race, the 4:15 start for the 4x4. Defending champion is Cedar Falls. State meet and all-time record was, I remember this one, was 3:48.49, set by Sioux City East. I remember it because Waukee ran 3:49 and didn't win. That was in 2009. Cedar Falls is the defending champion. We'll let Coach Wood lead us off on the 4x4.
Exciting time. I was looking back on stats again, in the past 5 years, 12 of the top 20 all-time 4x4s have been ran. So we talk about what we've done in this period of time, and that's impressive. I obviously coming back, I think Southeast Polk is right there. You guys ran 4:05.15 March 9th. That's really, I mean, we're striving for that. We're happy with the 4:05 middle of the season. I think that is just what kind of shape you guys were in to be able to run that was I think Lindmar coming back, Lily Hars, who was a freshman last year, she was a swimmer, and she anchored last year for a 4th place finish, I believe. I was excited to see what they could come back and do. I know they lost Joe Bennett, but they've always got people that can step up there. Ames, again, I know that you guys were going to have something coming. We weren't able to necessarily see it, so we didn't have enough meets to be able to see it. Again, Kenny with PV, I think, and Harmony, just having the experience, being able to come back through there. Waukee always finds a way to pull out more 58s. I don't know how, but so you find them. Again, depending on what Atumwa does with the Nosbish girls, that's the way that they were running could be pretty impressive too. And I know they were returning 3 of their 4, so it was going to be a fun one. I think it would have been. I don't know if we're going to get to that 3:48, but I mean that there's some pretty impressive teams that are coming back to put together squads there.
If I think back to last year, I think there were 9 teams that ran sub 4 last year. I think City High was the one that got knocked out.
Yeah, to make finals.
Just the depth in that group was pretty impressive to watch.
This one kind of hits hard just because of the fact, and it hits every team with seniors, but our seniors, 4x4 especially, they were kind of back when we started, really progressing well with those 400s, and they were really looking forward to this one. Hill and Clement, we could throw hearts in there. We had probably potentially 3 or 4 girls that could go low 57, and so the 4x4 was a big one for them. I'd be remiss if I didn't show the red stick to them. They knew it was we were going to go after it with the red stick at state, and that was going to be a fun one. So I feel my heart's broken for seniors all across the state, but especially I know with our crew that hit pretty hard there.
This could have been an interesting race. I think you look at some of the team scores that I'm sure we'll finish off with here. A lot of the teams in that team race are going to be in this final of the 4x4. A lot of pressure on the line. One thing's interesting. I think I was talking to someone about Atumwa. If they run that with the girls, just 2 of those girls accounts for possibly over 10 seconds under 4-minute pace, just with 2 girls. So I think they would have been a real factor in this 4x4 and someone that could have really got up there and competed with Sally Spoke and the rest of the crew for that title. It would have been interesting to see.
Okay, that concludes our discussion about the 19 events and some really great comments, some great insight by all the members of the panel. We have one other thing, and if you're not comfortable, you don't need to do it, but I would like to ask each panel member, and nobody's going to hold you to it, but we talk about the discussion about different events. What you have as a team. We have coaches in this room or on this podcast, all of which would be in the mix for trophies. Let's just go one coach after another. and just kind of give your if you don't give your top 3 finishes. Who's going to bring home the trophies? You maybe don't need to say who's first, second, and third, but who do you think are those teams that will separate themselves from the pack from a team standpoint? And we'll start. I'm looking at the screen here, so we're going to start. We'll start with Coach Willeford from Southeast Polk.
All right. Honestly, I would say it's Waukee and then the rest of the bunch. As far as, I'm not going to throw out specific numbers, anything else like that, but Waukee's a team to beat. There's after that, we've got so many teams that are going to be fighting for those top spots. Cedar Falls, I would say the Liberty, Atoma, hopefully ourselves, Pleasant Valley, Ames, Linn-Mar. I mean, it'd be wide open, but I think it's Waukee's the team to beat until somebody does finally. They're up there. Lots of respect for the Waukee team.
Coach Wheeler.
Yeah, hands down Waukee. I mean, it's hard to, not just battle that type of depth at the state meet, but when you have depth where you're not really losing anything from moving kids around from event to event, that's tough to handle. I think some other teams that I've really enjoyed watching Southeast Polk come along the last couple of years, and I think having a veteran group like that, you never know. That can mean a lot beyond talent sometimes. Just that extra push. And then, I think, when you have a person at the state meet that can potentially win any event that they're in, I think having a Mackenzie Michael on your squad can certainly put your team in a very good position, regardless of, what class you're competing in. So I think Cedar Falls would have been right in the middle.
Especially if we run her in 6 races.
Yeah.
Shot put?
All right, Coach Wood, what do you think?
I agree with the other guys. I think Waukee's right there. I would love to see someone knock him off. I love Coach Pries. I love that program, but it's time. Dark Horse. I think Iowa City Liberty would have gave a run for sure in that top 3 spot. I think with Keeney doing what she does, and they're young. I don't know if they have any seniors that would have been there, maybe 1 or 2 this year, but just they've had that little taste, and I think that they would have been impressive to watch. Linn-Mar's always right there. I still think Ottumwa would have been. I just think if Allie and Grace and they put that strategically together, they could score some high points up there, and it would have made an impressive run. I'm not throwing Ames out of the mix by any means, because I think there's just, after 3 meets, it was hard to see exactly what, but I think Ben knows in his back pocket what next year looks like, and he's just not letting it go right now.
Coach Pries.
Well, thanks guys for the kind words. We felt pretty good about what we had coming in, and I'm sure, just like you guys, when the governor made the announcement about schools, we kind of saw that coming. But based on the podcast that Ben had with Gary and Jared, kind of had this hope, just holding on that maybe there's a contingency plan. And when she said that we were done, that was just a gut punch. And I'm a pretty emotional guy, but I hadn't cried like that for a while. And I feel for all the kids, and for me personally, for our team, knowing that we had a good bunch back that could make a run at it, I think we probably would have got the job done. And I think that, Chad, your girls were going to be right there. Chris, yours too. I think both squads were loaded with talent. And then I think I look back at Ottumwa, I think they only scored like 39 points last year, which it seems like they could score a lot more than that. I think they're right there. And Ben, I know you've got a good bunch back. I think Ames is right there. And certainly Liberty, we've talked about them. I think they're there. And then, there's teams like City West. Coach Parker always has people ready to go. And I heard that he's got a nice freshman group this year. City High with Schachenbach and leadership like that, and a tradition. And then Kenny, I think the way
lurking, Matt, always lurking. But the way you and Jane run your program, you are always lurking. So I think it would have been a real toss-up. I think probably after us, I'm saying probably Polk, and then a dogfight for third with those other teams we mentioned.
Ben?
All right. Well, I'd like to start off by saying, Waukee, just the dominance they've had this last decade, it's raising the level of competition from the rest of us. And I don't think they're getting worse by any means, but it's making all of our teams better every year, just closing the gap. And I do think the gap would have been a lot closer this year than it might have been in the past with Waukee. I don't think they're spot them 40 points like a couple years ago and they score 120. I do think it'd be closer. I think the depth of the 4A field's better. And I think Southeast Polk would have been there neck and neck to the finish. I think it's within, single digit points for sure. As you guys agreed, Southeast Polk and Waukee could go either way. And I like Southeast Polk senior leadership. And I know Pries has leaders as well in his senior class. So I think those two teams. And then my third place team, I agree with Coach Wheeler, having a senior and someone that basically you can throw 40 points at when you step onto the track in Mackenzie Michael, and it wouldn't be easy for her, but she has that ability, and I do think that she would have helped them to a third place finish. But a lot of parity in the class. Iowa City Liberty. I still think they're a little bit of ways away, but they're closing fast with some more young talent as well, and Keeney leading them in the future. So Ottumwa would have been interesting to see how they put their state meet lineup together, and yeah. So and then the perennials that are always good: City High, Pleasant Valley, City West, those schools as well. So would have been a great state meet. And the 4A class has gotten so much better, and not just from Waukee's standpoint, but from the rest of the 47 schools.
I would agree with Ben that it's a different state meet than maybe the last 3 or 4 where maybe Waukee was a clear-cut favorite. Coach Priest knows that I'm an eternal pessimist, and so I always make sure that I bring him down a little bit. But I have it really close with Southeast Polk and Waukee, and I think Cedar Falls, as everybody's mentioned. I think that as good as Ottumwa and Liberty are, I think they run out of points. I think it's going to take into the mid-60s or above to win the meet, and I just don't think mathematically those two teams, as talented as they are at the top end, I don't think they can score enough to get to that point to win the meet, but possibly have a chance at a trophy. So it's too bad that we don't get to actually sit down there later on this week and watch it play out. But this has been a great chance for us to talk, not only, but also for other coaches to listen in on our perspective and your perspective as coaches as to how the meet might play out. As we said at the beginning, nobody knows. We know Mackenzie Michael can't run 6 events, so nobody knows where everybody's going to run. And that's what makes track such a special sport. And that's why coaches love the sport the way they do, because of the way they can strategically set their lineups. With that, I'll turn it back to the podcast leader, Mr. Duea, and you can finish things off.
All right. Hey, Tim, you got anything to add? I know you wanted to listen in on this one, and
yeah.
We'll close it down here for the night.
I got the royal treatment. I'm sitting in Ben's garage. Freezing, man. I need some heat out here. Kenny thought I was sleeping. He sent me a text a couple minutes ago. You guys are way too complimentary and nice to each other. I can't wait for the 3A one. I hope it's a bloodbath. I will say this, guys. No, obviously for me, I don't get a chance to compete against you guys at the state meet. So our shot at you guys is obviously the Drake Relays, and that's an important event for us. And obviously we need this year. I do appreciate and respect everyone's opinions and how you guys look at each other's lineups and what you do. I get a chance to see Coach Wheeler a couple times a year. And, yeah, you guys are way too nice to Coach Priest. I would be chomping at the bit. Give me 100 girls, Coach. I'll take you down every time.
That's because Priest is so nice.
I know. You can't hate the guy. Can't get mad at the guy. He's too damn nice. So, no, coaches, I loved hearing from you guys. I know we're all bummed for all of our kids, not just our seniors, but our underclassmen that, you look for those moments to try to build off of and those things that bring that passion to track and field and fuels that fire for the next year. And again, it's a bummer to again, I love all your guys athletes. I've grown appreciation for what that they do and how they compete again, hopefully they get a chance to move on and go to other levels and compete in track and field. And for those that are coming back, I know the Knights will be there looking for you guys next year.
All right. Well, thanks again, coaches. You guys did a really good job. That's going to be a good podcast. Many might not know that we did this at 9 p.m. and ending here at 10:36. So it shows the dedication of the high school track coach. Gosh, it just seems like as we get done here, it just seems like we want to go down to Drake Stadium and coach our kids up, and it's just not going to happen. But this did help. It's going to help the kids. They're going to enjoy listening to it. And I think for us coaches, it's helping us as well get through these really difficult times. So thanks for coming on. Jim Duea, you did a great job as the moderator. We knew you would in this 4A girls edition. And it's shocking how you got the shuttle hurdle relay.
Yeah. Well,
Ben, thanks to IATC for keeping us all through this season and kind of keeping us engaged, and especially with this to kind of come to a close. I know it's not ideal, but I know our kids and coaches appreciate it. So thank you to you and the program as well.
Yeah, we appreciate it.
Yep. All right, guys. Have a great
Thank you, Ben.
rest of the school year and an excellent summer.
thanks.
Shout out to all the kids, especially seniors. Thanks, Ben.
All right. See ya.
All right. Thanks, guys.